Or do you have to do something?
I just had to put my password back in. Paul, do I look at you when you talk or somewhere else?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Run your headphones
Yeah,
on
you
so you know
can
what we're doing.
Oh,
because your camera's right here, so you're fine looking at Paul.
okay.
Harry will probably go about 20 minutes to a half hour. That's his granddaughter.
You can share it. I already shared it to your public, so that might be.
What do I do?
You can share it again
Oh.
if you want to. I already shared it to your
On
public.
my page?
On public, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Stacey Graham Hunt is making New Haven tick with a gripping new book called Processing Pain. Stacey grew up here. The essays in her new book tell what that was like and what it's like coming of age. Welcome to the studio, Stacey.
Thank you.
And we'd like to thank Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. Stacey, before I ask you a bunch of questions, I wanted you to give, if you don't mind, our listeners a taste of what it's like to be reading your new book and why I asked you to come here to talk about it.
Sure.
So Stacey will be reading an excerpt from Processing Pain, her new book.
The name of this personal essay is called Afterbirth. When you go see the movie Birth of a Nation and then return home to your city that's 8% black, where your upstairs neighbor, a white male, continually tries to convince your black dad why he and other black people should vote for Trump, a misogynistic man with a history of racial discrimination lawsuits. Where another neighbor, who's a white cop, has only spoken to you once in the 3 years you've lived next door to him. That one time was because you said hello first. When you sit through that same 2.5-hour movie and watch white men rape, hang, shoot, kill, buy, sell, force feed, and knock the teeth out of black men and women, and you know the movie was based on a true story, an American story, about Nat Turner, a black slave who led a rebellion in the 1800s, killing about 60 white slave owners, many of whom were guilty of the crimes I just mentioned. When you get home from this movie and then can only stomach 20 minutes of Ava DuVernay's Netflix documentary, 13th, about how white Americans found a loophole in the 13th Amendment, which has legally allowed them to enslave and criminalize black people on minor charges, throw them into prison, and put them to work so that your country, which was once great, can thrive economically and hopefully one day become great again like it was during slave times. When the next day you sit at your laptop and wonder if by typing up and sharing this honest regurgitation of thoughts and feelings, you will in fact be considered the aggressor, despite all of the passive aggressions made towards you on a daily basis as a result of your skin color or hair texture. But at the same time, you know, God made you an emotionally sensitive black woman and gave you a storytelling superpower, which you're still trying to figure out, because He knew you would write all of these experiences in a way that people could understand and perhaps cause them to evaluate and change their own beliefs and behaviors. When you try to imagine what it's like to be free from thinking about your skin color or hair texture just for a day, and you remember having that freedom in a few other countries you visited, but it hurts your soul that you don't have this freedom in your own home, in your own neighborhood, in your own city, state, or country. Maybe I'll just move, I always say to myself, but who will stay and change things? We're already fleeing our own neighborhoods, leaving them in despair, and letting gentrification be.
That was Stacey Graham Hunt from her new book, Processing Pain. I recommend it. I read it myself and enjoyed it a lot. Well, enjoy, I guess it's a funny word to use. You talk about someone's pain. But you do something, not that it's vicarious their pain, it's that you're feeling something when you're reading it and getting to know somebody. Stacey, the reason thank you for reading that. The reason I asked you to read that part was not to give people a representative taste of the book, because it's not. This comes at the end, and that's sort of essay writing about what you think about what's going on in the world. And in fact, the book is very personal. It's a series of essays of things that happen specifically in your life.
Yes.
Which I found compelling. I got to, even though I met you before and talked to you, I felt like I got to know you a lot better from reading it. But the reason I wanted to read that first was to show people what we're working with. Someone who can really write, someone who has a certain take on the world based on her lived experience. But we're going to talk now about what's in the book.
Okay.
People know, I just want people to know how you write. By the way, 8% black, so that was not New Haven.
It's Ansonia.
Ansonia. And I've always been interested in Ansonia because it's always had a black community. It, you know, I know that a lot of black community left after the flood of, what was it, 55?
I'm not sure. I've lived there for about 3.5, 4 years. Yeah.
So there always is long-standing black community. A lot of it, if I'm not mistaken, is centered near a housing development that's getting knocked down.
Yes.
But it's always been there, but a little hidden because it's 8%. It's not 48%.
Right.
38%.
Correct.
And we do have the Independent does have a Valley Edition.
Yes.
Valley Sentinel. How are things in Ansonia? Do you like living?
It's okay. I miss, you know, the diversity of New Haven. And there's not as much to do, you know, out in Ansonia. So it's kind of where I just camp out. You know.
Why do you live there?
So interestingly enough, I was married and then I got divorced, and then I needed a place to live, like quickly. And a family friend, she said, I have an apartment, and it happened to be in my price range, and I had a dog, and she said, you can bring your dog, and so I was sold on the apartment.
What do they charge a month in Ansonia?
I think it's about $700, $800. It's much cheaper than
for a one-bedroom
for
or
two
a studio?
bedrooms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can really
Yeah.
And is it like a safe neighborhood and everything?
Yeah, my neighborhood is pretty safe.
So that's interesting. You know, I've been hearing a lot about that, about New Haven's becoming a place where either you need to have some real bucks to rent because it costs a lot, or you need to be really poor and on public assistance,
That's correct.
where they also charge an incredible amount. Like I live in a house,
Mhm.
a full house, not a big house, in Westville with 4 bedrooms, small bedrooms, about 1,700 square feet. I pay less for that whole house than someone living in a rundown housing project on Section 8 is paying for a 2 or 3 bedroom
Wow.
apartment.
I
But-
believe it, because even when I was looking for apartments in New Haven, they were easily $1,500 for a 1-bedroom.
Wow.
And you can't bring your dog, and
Wow.
you know.
So that's what we're seeing is that affordable housing has really gone out to the valley and the inner rings, some of the inner rings.
Yes, and Waterbury. A lot of
Yeah.
people moved to Waterbury.
That's interesting. And so before we get to some of the specific stories in your book, Stacey, how did you get the idea to write this book? Now, you've been a journalist. And so did you grow up in Hamden, New Haven?
I grew up in, Hamden in New Haven. I was born in New Haven. I lived there for like my elementary years, and then my family moved to Hamden.
Right,
and
you write about going to Lincoln Bassett School.
I went to St. Thomas's.
Oh, St. Thomas.
And I went to Hopkins.
I thought that you were getting picked up from school at Lincoln Bassett.
I went to, I don't think I wrote about this in the book, but I did go to someone's house after school. I would get watched over there.
Okay.
But, and her family, some of her brothers went to Lincoln Bassett.
I read the book a couple weeks ago, but I thought you were getting picked up by your father because your mother was working.
That was either at St. Thomas's or, yeah.
So you went to some of the really elite schools.
Yes.
But you live in, would you say, a working to middle class
Family, yeah, my family, we worked So they worked.
Both were working.
Both were working. My mom, she was a nurse, and my dad, he always had like a business job that he always had to explain to me 2 and 3 times. He basically is a buyer, to say it succinctly, but he negotiates contracts for supplies that his company needs.
So what gave you the idea of writing this book?
So I had no intentions of writing a book. I had this inclination, gut feeling, God telling me that I need to share some of these experiences that happened to me, some of my most embarrassing moments, and I kept putting it off and putting it off because who wants to do that? And so eventually, you know, I got to a place where I was like, fine. And so I shared the first story. This is on Facebook. I shared the first story on Facebook, and I started with...
So you wrote a whole chapter in a Facebook post?
Yes.
Some people have been doing that. We had a guy in Tim, I forget his name, he has a pretty best-selling, high-selling book now, and he's on the national TV shows. He's a story in Yale about what he feels are the dangers of the Trump administration. He started out as a Facebook post that went wild. That was an essay.
Yeah, I had no intentions of writing a book. I had no intentions of sharing any of these stories. But I started with the first one, which was about my great-grandfather passing away from Alzheimer's. And it got a great response, even though I was really, you know, nervous about it and felt like I was sharing way too much information on Facebook. And people were writing me and saying, you know, thank you for writing that, and my father died, or my so-and-so died when I was young, and I've been having a hard time processing that, and because of that relationship lost, I'm having these issues in my personal relationships now. So it gave me the courage to post another story. And then every time I thought I was sharing, you know, a scary story, someone would share an even scarier story with me. So it made me feel like I wasn't alone, and it gave me the courage to continue sharing.
It was nice to you talk about your embarrassing moments. And it is tender, and you are vulnerable when you write about stuff like being close to your grandfather, feeling guilt over when he dies, finding with Alzheimer's, or tough relationship with your mother, or as we get into an abortion and a kid who treated you skanky, dating him in high school. What's interesting to the reader, and I think it's like when you hear someone just tell you their backstory, what's embarrassing to you is so often not embarrassing in the view of the person who reads it.
That's true.
I read that and I say, what in the world would she be embarrassed about? I understand why it'd be painful. I understand why it wasn't her happiest moment, but I can't even find anything remotely embarrassing about the grandfather's death you were close to, or the tough relationship with your mom, or the abortion. I understand why it's private,
right?
And painful, yeah. I mean, that's part of the process of sharing our painful stories, whether it's in a book or Facebook post or conversation, is that maybe one way we heal through telling painful stories is to get that outside reinforcement that other people have gone through the stuff too. And we didn't do anything wrong.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't make us bad.
Right. And I think I needed that. I didn't know I needed it at the time, but it was very helpful, especially, you know, with the story of Vagina Gate.
Which we're definitely going to get to Vagina Gate. I'm saving that up for later in this show.
I was holding that in for so long, and like I stopped dating people for a while because I was like, I'm never going to go through an experience like this again. So going through that and writing about it and feeling all of that again, and then to have people look at the perpetrator and not me, it was like, oh, good. Like, maybe I didn't do anything.
Okay, now you anticipated where I'm going with Vagina Gate. You know what? Let's get right to Vagina Gate. I'm sick of Trump Gate and Russiagate and Watergate. Let's get to Vagina Gate. So Stacey Graham Hunt, in her new book, Processing Pain, which you can buy, go to processingpain.com.
Yes.
Okay. Stacey, why don't you read an excerpt about Vagina Gate? It involved your freshman year boyfriend. It's weird that you called him a boyfriend in this, but anyway, a freshman year boyfriend, according to you, Kwame.
Yes.
Who put out a nasty word about how you smell.
Yes.
And page 39.
Yes.
And this is an excerpt from and you're hearing the scandal unraveled here. WNHH's Dateline New Haven at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Author Stacey Graham Hunt is now going to read from her new book, Processing Pain, the section about Vagina Gate.
There was only one girl who had enough courage to confront me and ask me straight up what happened. We were waiting for our parents to pick us up after school one day. Did you let Kwame finger you? She asked. Yes, I said confidently. Well, he's telling everyone you stink, she said, just like that. She never talked to me again after that. I didn't respond. I didn't have any words. I felt betrayed by Kwame, embarrassed that the girl brought it to me like that, even if she was the only person to confront me. I also felt betrayed by my classmates, who were supposedly my friends, but ditched our relationships for a good laugh. I was humiliated, and they were laughing. My ex-friends insisting that I had a smelly vagina seemed like too big of a mountain to move. I was already dealing with other mountains. My parents were splitting up, my great-grandmother, the matriarch of our family, had died, and I was still adjusting to my grandmother's death from the previous year. Dodging vaginal disses at the same time was a lot. I did not care about how complex vaginas were at the time, and that practically anything could throw off their scent. New soap, old soap, medication, foods, beverages, using new laundry detergent on towels, not washing enough, excessive washing, physical activity, tight pants the day before your period, the days after your period, your actual period, wearing panties at night, a cold or other illness. I didn't care, and neither did my classmates. The poom poom is so unforgiving, my friend once said, imitating her Jamaican mother. The truth was that I did wash my ass before I met Kwame at the beach that day. I was excited about hooking up with him. I felt very prepared. But according to Kwame and a bunch of my classmates, I wasn't. According to them, I was this smelly chick. Everything eventually died down by my junior year, but sophomore year was hell to say the least. Because of my experience with Kwame, I wouldn't let any guy near any part of my body. I didn't want to give anyone the opportunity to agree with Kwame's findings.
All right. And that was Stacey Graham Hunt talking about an episode that was very painful in her life and lasted years. You were at Hopkins School, you were a freshman. This was your first boyfriend.
Yes.
You had, and when you said hooking up, it's not what we mean now. You didn't mean having intercourse.
No.
You're having your first kind of petting.
Yes.
What they call go to third base.
Yes.
And then he told everyone about it. And then you guys weren't hanging out anymore. And he started saying it's because you smelled skanky.
Yes.
And he talked about what your vagina smelled like. And everyone started
And
saying nasty things to you and going away from you.
Yes, and he didn't tell me first. He told, and he didn't even go to my school. So he told
Your common friends.
our common friends at school, and they didn't avoid me. They would just laugh at me.
And you didn't know why they were
And
laughing.
I didn't know why they were laughing at first.
Yeah.
And then it just eventually the girl I just mentioned, we were after school and she was my friend.
But you said that it affected you for quite a while.
It did.
You didn't date other boys for a while.
Mm-mm. Or if I did have a boyfriend, I wouldn't kiss them. I wouldn't let them touch me in any way. Not until I got to college. So that was sophomore.
And it was all because of vagina
all
game.
because of this guy.
And isn't it interesting when we're so vulnerable? I mean, I guess anything sexual, you're vulnerable your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just anyone knowing about you or talking about you can make you feel terrible.
Right.
But especially when you're an adolescent, just coming to grips with your changing body and the scary world of sex and the fishbowl of social relationships in high school, where every slight or who likes whom can make your self-worth just jump up and down.
And it's so magnified, and because we were at Hopkins, and it was such a small school.
An elite school.
Mm-hmm. And
status is
I don't
a big
think the
deal there.
whole school knew. I think it was just our group.
But in your mind, I'm sure you felt like
in
the whole
my mind,
world knew.
it felt like the whole city and state knew.
And so what I found interesting about this story, Stacey, is that it's still written from the perspective, and I think that's part of what's powerful about your essays. You get in the head of the teenager. And you're not really, in my opinion, when you wrote the story, you did step back and say what it looks like to someone who's in their 30s, right? You're in your mid-30s?
Yes.
And it's so obvious that Kwame was an idiot, right? But and boys are idiots, right? Males, anything about sex are idiots their whole life, and teenage boys are incredible idiots, right?
Yes.
And so, obviously, you tell me if I'm wrong, when I'm reading between the lines of the story, here was a kid who was nervous with a girl for the first time, and he really didn't know what to do. And he kind of felt very inadequate. So the way he felt inadequate, not knowing what to do, was to trash her, to feel big, to boast that he had gone to third base with her, and then put her down and say her vagina smelled skanky. Would you think that's a fair way of putting it?
It's definitely fair and reasonable. I never considered
That's
that.
not to make him sound more sympathetic. I think
Right.
it's worse that he did that. But that's how I read it as the male who's 57.
Okay.
But the other thing that struck me about it was one thing I didn't know being a male was that you and others go to this effort to affect how your vagina was going to smell.
Yes.
And why is it? It's almost like it's a given that there's something wrong with the way one smells naturally.
I think that's society. I mean, even if you
But that's
go,
crazy.
even if you go on like Instagram, you see memes about this. People joke about this, and
Even when they're not 16 years old? Or
even when
14
they're
years
not
old?
16 years old.
So what's the idea that
People joke
vaginas aren't
about-
supposed to smell like vaginas? What are they supposed to smell like? I'm sorry, this is the part I didn't get from your story. This is Vagina Gate to me.
Right.
Now, obviously, I'm
This is
sure
still,
there are a
I
lot
mean,
of,
this is the adults talking
and
about
I'm sure
this.
that the feminism wave of the 70s embraced that, right? Our
Mhm.
bodies ourselves.
Yes.
And we're not supposed to shave our hair, our armpits.
Right.
We're not supposed to conform to something that's not natural, and that what's beautiful is natural.
I don't think everybody feels that way,
But even when they're grown up,
even when they're grown up.
because I don't know anyone, I think, who would say that vagina smells skanky, or that's something to be embarrassed
Right.
about, or you don't say about something.
I've heard celebrities talk about other celebrities and say things like that about them.
Why?
Just to be mean, I don't know.
Okay. I guess you're right. Sometimes there's social pressure about being
Yeah.
unnatural.
Mhm.
And by the way, we are on Facebook Live, and Ashley Carroll writes in, "Go Stacy!" 2 exclamation points.
Hi, Ashley.
Joyce Fountain says, "We're watching and cheering you on." And Stylene Aponte says, "New Haven is very expensive for such a poor city." We're talking about rents. And congrats on your book.
Thank you, Stylene.
So what about when you look back at Vagina Gate now? What do you think in writing? Did anything change in how you viewed it in your mid-30s when you wrote this and published it for the whole world to hear? Something that was humiliating for you, for people to hear back then. Thank God it was before Facebook, can you imagine?
I know. I thought about that.
How was it different writing about it and publishing a story about it now?
Writing about it, so I felt all of those feelings again. I could put myself right back at Hopkins. I pictured myself, talking to Kwame on the phone. So that's why it comes out, as if I'm this 14-year-old. Because I felt all
Which
of
is good writing. Which is getting us in your head at that moment and understanding how a 14-year-old sees it.
Yes. I felt all of that again. And then I think this was probably the hardest story for me to publish. So when I hit the post button, as I felt with all my stories, my hands always would get really sweaty, and my chest would get tight, and I felt all of that again. And I even remember sharing this with one of my friends before I posted it, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you can't share that one." I was like, "I have to. It's already, I have to get this out." So I posted it, and I just waited to see what was going to happen, waited to see what the response was going to be. And when people were...
You posted it on Facebook.
They posted it on Facebook. And when people were kind of attacking Kwame, felt kind of good.
You got your revenge on Kwame 20 years later.
But also, a lot of the women were like, "Thank you for saying this, because we go through so much as women, and, we have to keep up, our bodies and do all of this stuff, and it's hard. It can be hard." So I felt a little bit of that. And then Kwame, I changed people's names in the story.
Oh, so he's not really named Kwame?
He's not really named Kwame.
Oh, bummer. I thought you smoked him out.
But he kind of snitched on himself in the comment section.
Oh, he read it.
He read it.
Do you still talk to Kwame?
Just through Facebook.
Or you're friends on Facebook?
We're friends
so
on
you're
Facebook.
friends on Facebook and Kwame. You worked it out.
We're friends on Facebook. And so
Let's leave it at that.
And so he apologized in the comment thread. And
What
then,
did he say?
He said he was really sorry. He didn't remember it, and he also didn't realize, what kind of impact that could have. He said, I think he said something to the effect of, like, he was remembering other kind of jerky things he'd done to girls, but this never even, like...
He didn't know what this had done
He
to
didn't
your
even,
life.
yeah, he didn't even remember it. So now that he knew, he apologized, and then other people in the comment section realized it was him, and then they had their own
What did they
conversations
say?
with him.
This is so interesting. The power of story 20 years later.
Yes.
To
I
revisit
know that
old wounds and
some
move on.
women were very upset with him. There was one conversation he had with a young lady I went to college with, and they kept going back and forth for days. So she was just saying, how kind of sexist it was, and how even though he was young, like he should have known better. And where's the respect for women?
So are you glad you did this? You glad you wrote about Kwame in public?
I am, because it was very freeing. Like I don't have to. It's not something I feel like I'm hiding anymore or don't want to talk about.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
So
good
like
to
I
hear.
would have never come on the radio and talked about this 20 years
I will
ago.
say you're one of the bravest people I've met so far. And your name is Stacey Graham Hunt. You have a new book out called Processing Pain.
Yes.
Buy it at processingpain.com. I read it. I got a lot out of it. I was really glad I read it. I think it's very well done. And Stacey's here. We got a few more minutes to talk about on WNHH's Dateline New Haven. Broadcast on 103.5 FM. Live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Another story you write about is having divorce, another painful moment. And that's a lot less to laugh about. But, I also found that one very interesting. I'm going to tell you why. But first, I'd like you to read us an excerpt about it. You went to college.
Yes.
And where'd you go to college?
This story took place at Florida A&M University.
Where you had a boyfriend named Michael.
I had a boyfriend named
First love.
I also changed his name too.
Okay, so quote Michael.
Yes.
And he, unlike Kwame, he was a pretty sensitive guy.
He was sensitive.
He let you go at your own pace there.
He did. He was a guy that when he was in high school, he was kind of like a womanizer, and then we met each other and we clicked, and then he like softened up a lot.
Well, he saw that you were a prize and that you were telling him you're going to go slow and it's got to mean something.
Yes.
I got that. And but you ended up, you had an abortion and you guys broke up.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little about the abortion? Read a segment of that from Processing Pain.
I would have done the same thing, my friend said. She tried to make me feel better about having an abortion. She was the one who drove me to Planned Parenthood. She told me not to look when we passed a group of protesters holding up signs of gruesomely disfigured babies. When it was all over, she was the one who drove me to her house, helped me lay down on her futon, and fed me fish sticks and french fries. I was doped up on anesthesia, which helped numb my fears about what Michael might say about me actually going through with the procedure. He wanted me to keep our baby. He was excited about the possibility of our little family. Although I wanted Michael to be the person I spent the rest of my life with, I wasn't ready for forever to start during my junior year in college. I had the abortion because I was scared. I was afraid of disappointing all the people who helped me get to college and stay in college. My mom paid for my private schooling, a good chunk of my college tuition, and for my rent every month. My dad sent me money every week and checked on me weekly. My grandfather, a minister, drove me to and from elementary and middle school for years. Bringing home a baby would have been so disrespectful after everything they had done for me. I was also afraid to face my friends and classmates. I didn't want to be the pregnant girl on campus. I just wanted to go to class like everyone else and be involved in a few campus activities. It all seems so shallow now. The people I was most worried about blending in with were not even a part of my life today. My child would still be here. But at the same time, it felt like a lose-lose situation. I had to choose between becoming a college mom or potentially losing everything I had with Michael. Everyone around me said education came first, so that's what I chose. After I terminated my pregnancy, as doctors say, Michael and I argued all summer. We argued about everything: missed phone calls, the tone of our voices when we spoke to each other, sneakers he wanted to buy me, a Habitat for Humanity assignment I worked on, everything. He was still in Tallahassee taking summer classes. I was in Connecticut doing a summer internship. Michael bragged about the new friends he was making that summer at school. They were all girls, of course. There was one new friend that he mentioned more than the others. Her name was Jessica. I met her my freshman year when we tried out for the same dance group. I made the dance group. She didn't. She was a much better singer than dancer, and she used her voice to gain popularity on campus. She was much more popular than I was, and I could feel Michael drifting toward her. I felt like there was nothing I could do about it from Connecticut. I felt totally out of control of everything: our relationship, my mood swings, and my guilt. I can't take this anymore, I told Michael. I'm sick of this. I kept saying things like that to him, and he believed me, and we broke up in the middle of the summer.
A couple of things struck me about your story, Stacey. One was, and tell me if I'm right about this, would the stereotypical case be boyfriend, girlfriend, woman gets pregnant, and the boy wants you to have the abortion so he doesn't have the responsibility, and the woman wants to have the baby.
That's what I would think.
So in this case, he wanted you to have the kid, even though you were young college students.
Yes.
And that's an incredible prospect when you're just getting started in college, and you would have this new responsibility. So, and am I right in assuming when I read between the line here that you and Michael had something so real that long after you broke up, that spark was still there, and not in sort of a flirting way. When I read the later chapters, you would go see him when he had a new girlfriend. You would move down your life. You would actually go visit him. You were always talking. He was a real soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the abortion, am I wrong? Your decision to have the abortion, him wishing you had it, ended the relationship that might have been your lifelong relationship.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we had talked about it since then, and he, in his head, he had said, I thought you would be the person that I married. And then when the abortion happened, he kind of felt like, well, what is this relationship if, she's not even having my baby? So
Yeah.
It made him question, the validity of the relationship.
How do you feel now looking back on the abortion?
So it's kind of twofold. Like, I don't agree. I don't think I would ever have another abortion.
Do you have a kid?
I know, but I am expecting one.
Whoa, you're pregnant, mazel tov. When are you expecting?
October.
Wow.
October 12th.
Congratulations. How you
Thank you.
feeling?
Good. I feel
You
good.
passed the first trimester.
Yes, I'll be
Someone here's such a good mood.
5 months. I'll be 5 months tomorrow.
Feeling good? Baby's
Yes.
good? All right. Way to go. So you said you wouldn't have another abortion.
No, I wouldn't. But at that time, like, I don't blame my 19-year-old self.
Oh, God, no.
I felt, I did what I felt was right at that time. And I also think that I don't, like, looking at who Michael became and who I became, I don't think we were supposed to be together.
Who did Michael become?
I know he's married, and I don't know, I don't want to tell all of his personal business, but he, I just think our personalities are different. I think some of our challenges I might not have been able to tolerate. So.
Okay. And so in retrospect, no regrets about the
No, I don't. Well, I do wonder about, how that child would have turned out and who that person would have become.
But now you got to be a mom.
But now I'm going to be a mom, and I feel like I'm getting a second chance.
At a point in your life when you're ready to do it.
Yes.
And what are you doing? Now, the book, when we last see you in the book, you've been laid off at a corporate job.
Yes.
So where are you now?
So I've recently started a business, Graham Hunt Communications, and I've been helping small businesses with their social media and public relations needs.
Oh, excellent. How's that going?
Good so far. I'm working with one client, and perhaps another one. I'm still in negotiations with her.
Uh-huh.
But good so far. I'm staying busy.
Excellent. And we heard from Kevin Jameson, who says, I miss you.
Oh, that's my
bunch.
dad.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Dad.
Who comes out well in the book. And Ashley Carroll, Go Stacy, exclamation point. So who are your favorite writers, Stacy?
Who are my favorite writers? I think it depends on what I'm looking for. I really like the intensity of, like, a Sister Soldier kind of book. I really like her a lot. I read a lot. I know they say that when you're a writer, you read a lot of books, but I actually read a lot of articles. So I don't know. I like to read a little bit of everything.
Or when you were in high school, what do you remember a book that had a big impact on you, or in college?
There was this book. It was called. I can't remember the name of it. You caught me off guard.
It's okay.
But it was about this guy. He was a black student at a white private school, and he ended up either getting shot or killing himself. But I always remembered that book, not the name, of course.
Well, you were a black student at Hopkins, which
Yes.
is mostly white. You wrote about it in your book, going to a house of a friend in Fairhaven.
Oh,
You
yes.
talked about how this mother talked to you so differently
Yes.
from the way that I guess she was white,
Yes.
parents talked.
No, I didn't change her name. Her name, that was Corey's mom.
Corey's mom. And Corey's mom, and I'm trying to remember, I guess I didn't mark that part in the book for you to read, about how Corey's mom dealt with you differently from other people. And what did she do exactly?
She just treated me like one of her kids. And I felt like when I went to other parents' houses, they like either went out of their way too much. Like I went to one friend's house and her mom made like collard greens.
Oh, that's
And-
right. You
and
talked
I-
about it. You get this like lousy soul food.
Yeah, and I was like, I know that you guys don't eat this. Like, what? Don't just make this because I'm here. And another friend, I went to her house, and she had an older brother, and her older brother had invited somebody over black that day, and I was just
oh,
like,
sort of like, let's invite the black people.
yeah, it just felt.
And you also talked about her listening to you.
Yes,
That was interesting.
She just looked at me, and she just wanted to know what I had to say. She didn't ask me like any questions about being black, or blackness never came up. It was just like, you're my daughter's friend, and you're here to play, and I'm just.
The other friends who made a big deal of trying to cook soul food and stuff, did they listen well when you were talking?
They listened well. Like, we were good friends, but so the interesting thing about the one who made the soul food, her mom that made the soul food. So I had a sleepover one summer. I think I was 10 years old, and I invited everybody in my class. This is at St. Thomas's. I invited everybody in my class, and but none of the kids from my class, they were all like on summer vacations and stuff. And so my friends from my neighborhood and my dancing school, they all came, and they were black. So she ended up being the only white person at my black, well, it wasn't a black sleepover, but just all my black friends came. And so her mom was uncomfortable about leaving her there, and said to my mom, like,
You're gonna protect her, make sure she doesn't get mugged.
Yeah, she's the only one here. And then my mom, eloquently said, well, how do you think Stacy feels when she's,
How did Stacy feel being in a mostly white school?
When I was young, I didn't really think about it. In elementary school, people would ask, like my friends, how often do you wash your hair? Or, you'd get little questions like that. But then when you get it for years and years and years, and now you're 15, 16, 17, and you're still hearing these kind of questions, it's like, okay, now, don't you know more than just me? Am I the one black person you know? So I think what ended up happening is I got tired of that, and so I ended up going to Florida A&M University.
Where there's historically black colleges.
Yes. I wanted a different experience.
That's so interesting. Well, Stacey Graham Holt, it's been such a pleasure first reading your book.
Thank you.
I wish you so much success with it. Processing Pain by Stacey Graham Hunt, and you just type that in on the internet, processingpain.com, and you can read the book too.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and there's so much more to talk about, but it's in the book.
Yes.
And a special thanks to Yellow Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. Thanks for the listeners and the people sending comments. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.
Yeah, it's a lot of comments. It's a lot of comments.
Yeah, that was good.
You can take this one?
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, let us know when we're off Facebook. Just wait till we're off Facebook so that